Hello everyone, dear students. Today we shall discuss about a new topic, that is memory management. Now let us look at the contents of the presentation. Let us begin with the background of memory management, then swapping, contiguous memory allocation. The next topic is paging, structure of the page table, and finally we will be learning about segmentation. So let us begin with the background of memory management. We all know that in the computer system there will be different types of memory. Basically, we'll find two types of memory, that is the primary memory and secondary memory. The secondary memory is basically non-volatile memory where the program and the information is stored permanently, and the other type of memory is primary memory, which is called as volatile memory or temporary memory. So, for example, RAM is the primary memory and the hard disk is the secondary memory. Here, the RAM is going to hold the data temporarily. We all know that. So whenever you want to execute a program in the computer system which is exist in the secondary storage device like hard disk, so we need to bring that program from hard disk to memory. Then a process is to be executed by the CPU. We all know that CPU can directly access only two things, that is CPU register and main memory or primary memory. We know that CPU itself is consisting of different registers like accumulators, base registers, index registers. Yes, CPU can have access to these registers directly, and also CPU can access to main memory, but CPU cannot access secondary memory. That is why the program which is stored in the secondary memory should be brought into main memory, and the CPU is going to fetch the instruction from the main memory or value from the registers to execute the programs instruction by instruction. So here the memory unit only sees a stream of addresses and request, that is address plus request, read request, or address plus data and write request. We know that the main memory is basically consisting of different memory words, that is the memory is divided into number of words, and each memory word in the main memory is identified by a address, that is called as memory address. Memory address will be starting from 000. So here the memory unit is basically sees a stream of addresses plus reading request. So reading request is basically reading data from the memory through a sequence of addresses, that is called a stream of addresses and read request, or during writing of the data. So it can see only the address and the data to be written to the memory. So we know that there is a instruction execution cycle. So that is fetch, decode, execute and store. So fetch basically fetching the instructions from the main memory, then decoding of the instructions will be done, and instructions are executed by the CPU, and after executing an instruction the result will be generated and the result will be stored back into the memory. So that is called as instruction execution cycle. So it is having the operations like fetch, decode, execute and store. Now to access data from the register, only one CPU clock is sufficient, but to access the instructions or data from the main memory, so definitely there may be many cycles required. To fetch or access data from the register, only one CPU cycle is sufficient, but to access data or instructions from the main memory, so definitely many numbers of cycles, CPU cycles are needed. And also we learned that there is another kind of memory that sits between main memory and CPU register, that is called as cache memory. So cache memory is faster as compared to main memory. So we already discussed that a program that you want to execute will be brought into main memory from the disk, that is the secondary storage, and some part of that program will be loaded into cache memory from the main memory in order to speed up the execution. So in a multi-programming environment, what we do is we bring multiple programs into main memory because we'll have to execute multiple programs simultaneously to increase CPU utilization and to increase the throughput of the system. So here it is necessary to provide protection of memory. Do you notice the memory protection? Because the number of processes will be running concurrently. It means the number of programs are brought into main memory simultaneously. Here just you have to make sure that one process is not modifying the contents of another process. It means a process should not be accessing the memory which is allocated to another process. So one sort of protection we need to provide here. Now let us look at the hardware support for this memory. So basically in the system we'll find two kinds of register. One is called as base register and then one is limit register. So as we can see in the diagram here, so this is a memory layout. It's a main memory layout. If you look at this, the memory address will start from 0 and this is the last address of memory. At the beginning of the memory, actually the operating system program will be kept here, because when we start the system, the first program to be loaded and executed is operating system program. Hence at the beginning of the main memory you'll find operating system program loaded here, then it will be executed. And once operating system is loaded and executed, then we run the user programs. In a multi-programming system, what we do is multiple programs we execute concurrently. So the many programs will be brought into the main memory. We know that program under execution is called as a process. So the number of processes will be executing concurrently and their code is or program is brought into the main memory. Now here to locate address of a process in the main memory, we make use of base and limit registers. So base register basically holding beginning address of the program or process in the main memory. So for example, if you look at this particular process, so this process address is beginning here. So this is the address is called as the beginning address of the process. So this particular program is stored in the main memory at this particular address. So this is the starting address. So the starting address of this particular memory location of this process will be stored into base register. So base register is basically holding what? Starting address of the program or process which is kept in the main memory. So limit is basically identifying the range. So from the base, so this is the limit given here. So limit register is holding a value. It is basically indicating size of the process or program. So this is the starting address of the program where actually it is kept in the main memory, and from this the limit is this value. It is indicating size of that particular process. So the memory allocated for this particular process will begin here, and the ending address will be calculated like base address plus limit. So base address is the starting address, limit is the size of the code that you want to put in the main memory. So base address plus limit will give us this ending address. So base and limit registers basically defines logical address space. Now let us see hardware address protection with base and limit registers. We already discussed about protection. Here one particular processor should not access the memory space which is allocated to another process when it cannot have access to the operating system's memory. So one kind of protection we need to provide. We just need to ensure that not a single process is able to access the contents of other process or operating system memory. So to achieve this, hardware is supporting for that. So let us see how it is going to do it. It means any attempt by program executing user mode to access operating system memory or other users memory result in trap to the operating system, which treats the attempt as fatal error. If you look at the diagram here, so CPU is basically generating addresses that is called as a logical address. the address which is generated by CPU is called as logical address. So in the previous diagram we already learnt about the base. It is base register holding the starting address of the memory where actually the program or the process is kept. It's the beginning address of the program or process in the memory. So it will be stored in the base register. The CPU is going to generate the logical address for accessing instructions from the memory for that particular process. So here the address is generated by CPU should be greater than or equals to base register. If you look at the previous diagram, here see base register is this one, and whatever the address generated by CPU logical addresses should be greater than this up to this value. Okay, so that we supposed to check here. The CPU generating logical address, it should be greater than or equal to base. If it is not greater than or equal to the value stored in the base register, then it is called as a trapped operating system. It means CPU is trying to access the memory which is allocated to some other process, or it is trying to access operating system's memory, which should not be allowed because we need to provide protection. Here process should not be allowed to access either operating system's memory or any other process memory. So that CPU must be accessing only the memory which is allocated to a process. It should not go beyond the range. So that is what this particular condition we need to test here. The CPU addresses should be greater than or equals to the starting address allocated to the process. If not, it means it is the time to access either operating system's memory or any other process memory which should not be allowed because it is violating the protection. So that is called as a trap. It is called as a trap operation, and CPU will be immediately suspended. So it is called as addressing error. If everything is fine, whatever the address generated by CPU, it is greater than or equals to the address stored in the base register. So the condition is yes. If it is true, then we come here, and one more condition we need to test here. And whatever the logical address generated by CPU should not exceed base plus limit. If you look at the previous diagram, so base is here, this is starting address of the memory location, and limit. So from here to here it is basically range. Limit is the size of the process or the memory allocated to process. So base plus limit is providing this end address. So whatever the CPU generating logical address, it should be above this value. It should be greater than or equal to this value and should not exceed the upper range. So this is the last address of the memory location allocated to the process. So it should not exceed base plus limit. It should be within this particular range. So that condition we need to test here. So if the address is less than base plus limit, then we will have the physical address. The addresses which are used in the main memory to access the contents of a process from memory, it is called as physical address. If it is no, if this condition is not satisfied, then again it is a addressing error. Then we stop CPU from accessing that particular memory. So one thing you have to remember, the address is generated by CPU is called logical address, and logical address should be converted to physical address. So physical address is the actual address where actually the program instructions are stored. So these two conditions we need to test here. So these two conditions basically ensures protection. So since it is supported by the hardware, base and limit registers are supported by the hardware, so it is called as hardware address protection. Now let us look at address binding. So there is one question here. Once you compile a program, you will get an object code, and object code's starting address will be always 0000. Now question is it possible to load that program in the main memory at the same starting address 000? It may not be possible. Do you know why? Because in the main memory, the operating system program will be stored from the location 000. So that particular location is not available for the user program. But after compilation of the user program, the object code that we get out of it will be having the starting address of 000, but at the same address we cannot load the user process, because at 000 always you will find an operating system program, and after operating system program only we must load the user program. So one kind of address binding is required. So that is called as program relocation. It means in the object code, the program starting address will be 000, but actually in the physical memory it cannot be loaded at the same address. So it must be relocated to different memory location that is having different address in the main memory. So that is called as memory. So that is program relocation. So there must be address binding required here. So whatever the addresses exist in the object program, they must be translated to actual physical addresses. So let us see how it can be done. And another point, address is represented in different ways at different stages of program life. So that is what I told. Source code address is usually symbolic, like count. For example, count is a variable and its address is basically symbolic. Count is a symbolic name. And compile code addresses bind to relocatable address. So that is what I discussed. Whatever compile code will have, it will have the starting address of 000 and it must be relocated. So that address bind to relocatable addresses. So for example, 14 bytes from beginning of this module. Then comes loader and linker. So loader or linker will bind relocatable addresses to absolute addresses. So whatever relocatable addresses we are having, they are converted to absolute addresses where actually the program has to be loaded into main memory. For example, the relocatable address is basically 14 bytes from the beginning. So at the beginning there will be operating system program. Assume that operating system has consumed 14 bytes of memory, and after 14 bytes we can load the user program in the main memory. So the 14 bytes from beginning of the module is basically called as relocatable address. But the loader and linker will bind these relocatable addresses to actual absolute addresses in the physical memory. So it is basically like this. It is 74,014. 14 bytes is added to 74,000. 74,000 is something like a, what I can say, absolute address, where actually the 14 bytes from beginning is added to, it will become 74,014. And each binding maps one address space to another. So now let us look at multi-step processing of a user program. So the program which is written by the programmer is called a source program. So source program will be given to compiler or assembler. We know that what the compiler does, it takes input as source program and it is producing an object program which is consisting of object codes. So this object codes will be having the starting address from 000. So this is called as compile time. Now, so this object model is given to linkage editor. So it is basically a linker and loader we want to use here. So do you know what is the role of linker? So linker is going to link your object model. So that is the program with other object model. See, if in a program if you are making use of the contents of some other program, then we need to link the object model of the program with other object models. So it will be done by linker. It is called as a linkage editor. Then it is going to generate load model. So load model is given as input to the loader. We know that in the program we make use of different libraries. For example, in C program we make use of std await.h library which is providing the functions like printf and scanf. So before actually the program is executed, we need to link the code that we got out of linker should be related or linked with the system library. So loader's job is to link load model with the system library. So actually the system library will be included in the load model. So this is called as load time. So in the load time we make use of loader and linker, and after that we get a executable code. So that is in the main memory, the binary image of the code will be present. Here it is a dynamically loaded system library. The system libraries are linked dynamically, that is during execution time, that is called as dynamic linking. So dynamic linking is basically dynamically the system libraries have been linked to the machine code that we got after the loader. Now the program gets executed, it is called as execution time. During execution time, the dynamic linking will be performed, and all other kind of linking. The linking load model with the system library, linking object module with other object models is called as static linking. Dynamic linking is basically system libraries are linked to the executable program during execution. It's called as dynamic linking. Now let us look at binding of instructions and data to memory. Let us see how instructions and data can be bound to the memory. Address binding of instructions and data to memory addresses can happen in three different stages. So that is what we learned in the previous diagram: compile time, load time, execution time. So binding of instructions and data to memory addresses will be happening in three different stages. The first one, compile time. So that is during compilation of the program. Compiler will be translating program to object model. In this case, there will be some address binding happening. If memory location is known to us in advance, then absolute code can be directly generated. What is absolute code? So this is basically the address where actually we can directly load program into the main memory. If the memory location where exactly the program is to be loaded, if it is known to us, then compiler can directly generate the absolute code and that program can be loaded into the memory directly. The second one is load time. Here the whatever the addresses generated by the compiler, those addresses are not used during loading program into main memory. For example, compiler if it generates a starting address of 00, that program may not be loaded at the same starting address 000 because at address 0 in the main memory, actually the operating system is kept here. Now we'll have to relocate that program in the main memory. At different location we have to store the memory. So at the load time, the program relocation will be done here. It is going to generate a relocatable code. If memory location is not known at the compile time, if the first condition is not satisfied, it means if the memory location is not known to the compiler, then that program has to be relocated at the load time. For that, it is generating relocatable code. And third one is execution time. So during load time, actually there will be binding of instruction and data to memory is done. So that is called as static binding. And during execution, actually the binding is delayed until runtime. The process can be moved during execution from one memory segment to another segment. Say during execution time, if the process is moved from one memory segment to another memory segment, then it is better to do binding at the execution time. So at the compile time or load time, we cannot do the binding because during execution, the process may be moving from one memory segment to another. So we may not be knowing the exact addresses in the memory. So it is better to delay binding till execution time. So this is called as dynamic binding. If the binding of the instructions or data to memory is done during execution time, then it is called as dynamic binding. So to have the dynamic binding, we need the support of hardware. Like we need to make use of registers provided by the CPU, like base and limit registers. So this is necessary for the address binding done at the execution time, that is called as dynamic binding. Now let us move to the next topic. Let us understand what is the difference between logical and physical address space. Here, the logical address space is bound to a separate physical address space in the memory management approach. So actually the logical address are generated by CPU. They are also called as virtual addresses. The addresses which are generated by the CPU to access the program instruction from the main memory, that is called as logical address. And the physical address, these are the actual addresses which are seen by the memory unit. So these are the addresses for the program instructions which are actually exist in the main memory. And whatever the logical addresses generated by CPU, they must be translated to physical address to actually access the program instructions from the main memory. So later on we will be studying how those address translation can be done here. Here logical and physical addresses are same in compile time. At the compilation time, both the logical and physical addresses will be same. They are assumed to be same. And at the load time, one address binding will be done here. So that is called as the static binding. So load time address binding scheme will be there. Here logical or virtual addresses and physical addresses will differ in execution time. At the execution time, actually we need the physical addresses. The logical address should be converted to physical addresses. Now the logical address space is a set of all logical addresses generated by the program. So this is usually happening at the compilation time. Compiler is going to generate the addresses which is used by the CPU to access the instruction from the memory. So these are called as logical addresses. And physical address space is a set of all physical addresses generated by the program. The program will be loaded into main memory at a different address from the addresses generated by the compiler. So that is due to relocation. So this space is called as physical address space. Now let us look at one important unit that is exists in the hardware, that is called as memory management unit. In short, we call it as MMU. MMU stands for memory management unit. So hardware device that at runtime maps virtual to physical address. So it is basically a mapping of virtual address to physical address will be done by memory management unit. In other words, we can say that conversion of virtual or logical addresses to physical address, it will be done by memory management unit. Now let us consider a simple scheme where the value in the relocation register is added to every address generated by user process at the time it is sent to memory. So here we make use of relocation register. So basically the base register that we already learned. So base register will be holding the starting address of the program in the memory. So the base register in the memory management unit is called as relocation register. For example, MS-DOS on Intel A0XX86 microprocessor using 4 relocation registers. So relocation register is basically called as is nothing but base register which is called as relocation register in memory management unit. And we learned that user program deals with basically logical addresses and it never knows about actual physical addresses or the real physical addresses. At the execution time, actually binding occurs when a reference is made to location in the memory. It means a logical address is bound to physical address. So during execution time, actually we need the actual memory address to fetch the instruction from the memory. In that case, we need to bind the logical addresses which are generated by the CPU or program to the physical addresses. Now let us look at the same thing in the diagram here. CPU generates logical address. For example, the logical address is 346. So there is a memory management unit. So this is basically hardware. So it is having a register called a relocation register. So relocation register is nothing but a base register. Okay. So the base register is holding a value 14,000. So this is the address in the main memory where actually the program instructions are stored here. Okay, so the logical address generated by CPU, that is 346, should be added with relocation register. So that is 14,000 will get the actual physical address, that is 14,346. So this is called as binding of logical address to physical address. How the logical address is bound to physical address? The technique is very simple. Logical address is added to the value of relocation register, that is the address stored in the relocation register. So that is the starting address. The starting address plus 346. The actual physical address we got here is 14,346. So this is the address of a particular instruction of a program which is actually exist in the main memory. So that is how the address binding will be done with the help of memory management unit. Now let us look at dynamic loading. The entire program and all data of a process must be in physical memory for a process to execute. If you want to execute a program, the entire program instructions along with its data must be exist at the main memory or physical memory. And the size of process is limited to size of physical memory. So it means the size of process or a program that you want to load into main memory should not exceed the size of the physical memory. So you know that the physical memory is basically shared. At the beginning, some amount of memory is allocated to the operating system and remaining memory space is given to the user programs. So whatever program you want to load into the main memory, its size should not exceed the available physical memory. And in the dynamic loading, actually the program routine is not loaded until execution time. Say in a program, for example, there will be a number of functions will be called. A function which is to be called in the program is called as a routine. So these routines are not loaded into the main memory until they are called. When a particular function is called, then only its definition will be loaded into main memory. So that is called as dynamic loading. So what is the advantage of dynamic loading? See, if the process size is larger than the amount of memory space left in the main memory, then that program cannot be loaded in the main memory. In this case, what we can do? We can go for dynamic loading. So if you take a C program, the execution will begin from main function. So at the beginning, only main function can be brought into the main memory, and main function is going to make function calls. It is going to call the other functions, and whenever a particular function is called from the main, only that function instructions can be, or function definition can be loaded into memory. So it means part or program functions are loaded only whenever they are called. So like this, that problem can be solved here. So basically, it provides better memory space utilization, and unused routines is never loaded. So instead of loading all entire program code into main memory, only the routine which is being called, which is being executed, which are required to be executed, should be brought into the main memory, and unused routine is never loaded. So that is how we can save the memory space. So that is providing better memory space utilization. And all routines kept in the disk are in relocatable load format. And it is useful when large amount of code are needed to handle infrequently occurring cases. So whenever a program is having a large amount of code, in this case dynamic loading approach can be adopted. So dynamic loading doesn't require any support from the operating system. It can be implemented through program design, and even operating system can help by providing libraries to implement dynamic loading. Operating system is providing some of the APIs or system calls. Using them, we can implement dynamic loading. Now let us move on to the dynamic linking. So as we already discussed, there are two kinds of linking. One is static linking, another one is dynamic linking. System libraries and program code combined by the loader into the binary program image. So before the program is executed, the system libraries are linked to program code. So it is called as static linking. The dynamic link is basically the linking of system library and program code will be postponed until execution time. So this linking will be done at the time of execution, that is called as dynamic linking. So as we already learned that a process may be migrating from one location, migrating from one segment to another segment. In this case, static linking is not suitable. So in this case, we need to go for dynamic linking because the addresses of the instructions will be continuously changing whenever a process moves from one memory segment to another memory segment. So in that case, we need to go for dynamic linking, and linking of system libraries and program code should be postponed till execution time. And here a small piece of code that is called a stub will be placed into a memory. So that is used to locate an appropriate memory resident library routine. See, a library routine must be loaded into memory during execution time. At what location it has to be loaded, it will be identified by a small piece of code that is called as stub. So within the main code, main routine, there will be a small piece of code that is called a stub. So stub is basically used to locate appropriate memory location where the library routine has to be loaded. And whenever program is executed, that is at the execution time, the stub is replaced with the address of the routine, and that particular routine will be executed. Here the operating system checks if routine is in processes main addresses. If not in the address space, then add to the address space. So the dynamic linking is particularly useful for the system libraries. It is also known as shared libraries. Now let us move on to the next topic, that is called as swapping. We know that in the multi-programming system, the multiple programs we need to load into the main memory, and here the size of main memory is limited. We cannot store all the programs that we want to execute in the main memory. The program which is currently being executed can be kept in the main memory. The program which are not be currently executed can be stored somewhere outside. So here we make use of a concept called swapping here. So the process can be classified into two categories: active process and passive process. The system will be executing multiple processes. So these are basically categorized into two types: active processes and passive processes. The active processes basically are being currently executed, and they must be present in the main memory. And passive processes, they are in the queue. Their execution is not yet started, but they are ready to execute. Such processes we can store at a different location, and whenever they are executed, they are brought into the main memory. Now let us see what is swapping here. A process can be swapped temporarily out of memory to some backing storage. Then it can be brought back into memory for continued execution. Here the total physical memory space of a process can exceed physical memory. So in this case we can make use of swapping. So let us understand what is the backing store. So backing store is basically a fast disk storage which is large enough to accommodate copies of all memory images for all users, and it must provide direct access to these memory images. So there are two operations being carried out in the swapping process: rollout, rolling. So rollout is basically moving a process from main memory to backing storage is called as rollout, and bringing that particular process back to main memory from the backing storage is called as rolling. So that is, for example, if you take a priority based scheduling algorithm, basically there will be different processes running in system having different priorities. So highest priority process will be executed first as compared to lowest priority process. So one technique we can adopt here, lower priority process can be swapped out, it can be rolled out, so that higher priority process can be loaded and executed. And after the completion of the execution of higher priority process, the lower priority process which is stored into backing store can be brought back to the main memory for the execution. So that is called as rolling operation. Here the major part of swap time is transfer time. What is transfer time? The amount of time spent during the transfer of process from main memory to backing storage and from backing storage to main memory. So that is during rollout and roll-in operations. The total amount of time spent is called as transfer time. So this is very important. It is with overhead to the system. Here the total transfer time is directly proportional to the amount of memory swapped here. If the amount of memory that you want to swap out of main memory to backing storage, if it is large, then the total transfer time will be more. If the total amount of memory are swapping out, if it is small, then the swap time is also less. System is maintaining a ready queue of ready to run processes which have memory image on the disk. Now the question is, does the swap out process need to swap back in to the same physical address? Yes, most of the time the process which is swapped out and stored into backing store and will be brought back to the physical memory or to the main memory at the same physical address. Most of the systems will adopt this particular approach. And so there are some modified versions of swapping, so that are used in the many systems like Unix, Linux and Windows. So in these systems, usually the swapping operation is not disabled. Swapping will be expensive here. It is not efficient with respect to time, because always swapping out, swapping in causes delay in the program execution. That is, there will be transfer time added to the program execution time. So it is not preferred always. So these systems basically will disable the swapping option, and it will be enabled only when if the memory size or memory utilization crosses threshold value. See, in this system there is some threshold value kept in the main memory. For example, if the memory size is 1 megabyte, that is 1000 bytes. For example, the threshold value is kept as 900 bytes. So whenever the memory is utilized up to 900 bytes, then we can enable the swapping. Until that, swapping will be disabled, and it will be disabled again once the memory demand reduced below the threshold value. Whenever we cross the threshold value, the swapping will be enabled. It means the programs are swapped out, and whenever the memory demand is reduced the below threshold value, that is for example below 900 bytes, we can disable swapping again. So now let us see schematic view of the swapping. So this is a main memory. Actually at the beginning there is operating system. So this is user space. Actually the user programs has to be loaded. So this user space may not be sufficient if the program is large. In this case, the existing processes from the main memory can be swapped out. So that is called as rollout. So there is a backing storage. It is basically high speed disk where actually temporarily the programs are swapped out. For example, process P1 is swapped out of main memory and it is moved to backing storage, and the process P2 which is already there in the backing storage can be swapped in. It can be brought into the main memory and it can be executed. So this is called as swapping. Now let us see what is the context switch time that is including swapping time. If next process to be put on CPU is not in memory, it is there in the backing storage. Need to swap out a process and swap in the target process. A process that we want to execute in the backing storage and the already existing process should be swapped out to backing store, and the process that we want to execute is called as the target process should be swapped into the main memory. So this is called as context switching time. This is called as context switch, and the context switching time is quite high. For example, so there is a 100 MB process swapping to hard disk with a transfer rate of 50 MB per second. So the transfer rate of the backing storage is 50 megabytes per second. We can transfer 50 megabytes per second, and if we want to transfer a process of 100 megabyte from main memory to hard disk, then what is the total time required here to transfer 100 MB process? It is 2 seconds. 50 MB per second to transfer 100 MB, 2 seconds are required. If you convert it in milliseconds, it will be 200 milliseconds. And plus there is a disk latency. So latency is basically delay to perform read or write operations in the backing storage, that is the disk. It is of 800 milliseconds. So the total swapping time will be 2000 milliseconds. That is the time required to transfer 100 MB of memory. It will be 200 milliseconds plus disk latency is of 800 milliseconds. The total swap out time will be 208 milliseconds. So this is the time taken to transfer a program from main memory to disk, that is backing storage. It will be 2008 milliseconds. It is more than 2 seconds. It is very huge. Plus the same amount of time is required if I want to bring that program back to the main memory from backing storage. So the total time will be, the total context switching time will be 4016. It is 2008 milliseconds for swapping out operation and another 2008 milliseconds for swapping in operation. The total swapping time will be 4016 milliseconds. It is in fact more than 4 seconds. It is very huge. Hence, the context switching or the swapping operation is not always preferred. Whenever we cross the threshold value that is set by the operating system, then only we can go for the context switching or swapping. Here we can reduce the context switching time or swapping time if you reduce the size of memory swapped. Here the operating system is supporting for memory swapping through system call. There are two system calls used here, a request memory and release memory. Whenever request memory is called, the program will be swapped out, and whenever release memory is called, it will be swapped in. Now let us move on to the next topic, that is contiguous allocation. So it is basically about allocating memory to process in the main memory, and usually the main memory is divided into the number of partitions. The partitions can be of a fixed size or it can be of different size. So there are different approaches that we study for memory allocation to the processes. Resident operating system usually held in low memory with interrupt vector. As we already see in one of the diagram, that at the starting address at the beginning of the main memory, the operating system will be loaded. Operating system program will reside in the lower memory. Lower memory means it is at the lower address, that is from address 000 the operating system program will be residing, and the user processes will be loaded after the operating system. They will be residing in the higher memory, that is at the higher memory addresses, and each process contained in a single contiguous section of memory. So each process is allocated or it is stored at a single contiguous section of memory. Here relocation registers are used to protect user process from each other. Here we have to make sure that one process is not modifying the operating system contents, it is not accessing the operating system's memory or the other process contents of memory. So one kind of protection is provided by using relocation registers, that is already studied. Here the relocation register contains a value of smallest physical address. Limit register contains the range of logical address. Each logical address must be less than the limit register. For example, the relocation is holding a value. Relocation register is holding a value that is 100040, and the limit is the range, that is 7460. And memory management unit maps logical address dynamically. The logical addresses are mapped to physical addresses dynamically by the memory management unit. So that is what we learned, that is the relocation address plus limit will be the formula to use to map logical address to physical address. So the same thing is shown here. The CPU is going to generate logical address, and there is a limit register, and its value will be compared with the logical address. If the logical address is smaller than limit address, then we proceed here. Otherwise, it will be called as trap and will be getting addressing error. Here the logical address generated by CPU must be less than the value stored in the limit register. If it is true, then it will be added to the relocation register, that is containing the base address. It is also called as a base register. Here it will be base register plus limit address. Base address plus limit address is basically giving us actual physical address. Here the logical address is mapped to physical address by adding limit register value with relocation register value. Relocation register is holding the base address, and the limit value will be stored in the limit address. So limit is added with base, so that is how we are generating physical address. If the logical address is less than the limit, it is called as addressing error. So that is how the hardware is supporting for relocation of limit register for address binding. So as we already discussed that the main memory will be having the multiple partitions. So a main memory is divided into several fixed size partitions, and each partition may contain exactly one process. A particular process can be stored into a particular fixed size partition in the main memory. And the degree of multiprogramming limited by the number of partitions. So what is the degree of multiprogramming? The degree of multiprogramming basically defines how many programs we can execute simultaneously on the system. It means how many programs are to be loaded into main memory. The degree of multiprogramming must be high, because we need to increase the throughput of the system, and basically it is controlled by the number of partitions. How many programs we can brought into the main memory, that is depends on how many partitions available in the main memory. So that is what the degree of multiprogramming is limited by the number of partitions that are available in the main memory. So there is something called memory hole. So it is basically a block of available memory where actually we can store the program or a process. So that is called as hole. So holes of various size are scattered throughout the memory. So there will be memory holes which are not exist at the same location. Actually they are scattered throughout the memory. Whenever a new process arrives, it is allocated a memory from a hole that is large enough to accommodate it. So largest hole that is sufficient for the new process must be allocated. And whenever a process completes its execution, the process is exiting by freeing its partition, and it is combined with the adjacent free partition. The operating system maintaining the information about allotted partitions and free partitions or available memory holes the operating system is going to maintain here. So let us take one particular example here. So this is a main memory. At the beginning there will be operating system and the programs are residing here. The process are residing in the main memory. The process 5 that is loaded after operating system. Then there is a process 8. Then you will find process 2. Here process 8 has completed the program execution, and whatever the memory space it has occupied, it will be freed here. So there is a memory hole created. So this is the memory hole created after process 8 completes the execution and it releases the memory. And suppose that a new process, that is process 9, arrives here. Its memory requirement is smaller than the available memory hole. So a portion of this memory hole will be allocated to process 9. So this is the amount of memory left here after allocating memory to process 9. Now another process arrives, say process 10. So out of this remaining memory, the required amount of memory is allocated to process 10 still. So this much amount of space is left here. So this is the memory hole. If any new process arrives, say for example process 11, and the memory requirement for process 11 is more than the available memory hole, then that process has to wait until any one process completes the execution. For example, process 2 completes the execution, whatever the memory allocated to process 2, it will be free, and that memory will be combined to its adjacent memory hole. So this is the adjacent memory hole, and will combine the memory released by process 2 with this adjacent memory hole. We get a large memory hole which can be allocated to process 11. Now let us see what are the different allocation strategies we can adopt here. That is how to satisfy a request of size n from list of free holes. So in the memory there are many free holes, but they are scattered throughout the memory. They are not exist at the same location. Actually the memory holes are scattered throughout the memory. And how a request will be satisfied, or what are the different strategies we can adopt, we can see here. The first one is first fit. It is basically allocating the first hole that is big enough for the new process. So what we do is, to allocate a hole for a new process, what we do is we scan through the entire memory which is consisting of different holes, and we consider a partition which is big enough. We consider the first partition or first hole which is big enough to accommodate a new process. That is called a first fit. The next one is best fit. Here basically we allocate the smallest hole which is large enough to accommodate a new process. Here we need to search the entire list and we need to look for the memory hole which is smallest and big enough to accommodate a new process. So this is called as a best fit, and is producing the smallest leftover memory hole. So after allocating memory using best fit approach, only smallest memory will be left here, that is it is producing the smallest leftover hole. The last approach is worst fit. Here we allocate largest hole. Again we scan through the list and largest hole will be allocated to the new process, but it is producing largest leftover hole. So among these three, which are the strategies are good? Best fit and first fit better than worst fit in terms of speed and storage utilization. First and best fit provides better storage utilization as compared to worst fit. Worst fit basically may lead to wastage of memory, so it is not preferred. So we can go for remaining two, that is first fit and best fit. So they are faster and also they provide efficient storage utilization. Now let us move on to the next topic here, that is segmentation. Both the first fit and best fit memory allocation strategies suffer from external segmentation. Let us understand what is the segmentation. So there are two kinds of fragmentation: external fragmentation and internal fragmentation. Let us understand what is external fragmentation. As processes are loaded and removed from memory, the free space is broken into little pieces. And external fragmentation exists when there is enough total memory space to satisfy a request, but available space is not contiguous. Here the memory holes are scattered throughout the memory. If you count the total available memory, then it can satisfy the request, but it is not available at the same location. The available memory spaces are not contiguous, they are not nearer. So even though the sufficient amount of space is available in the memory, still you are not able to allocate it because the available memory holes are not contiguous, they are not nearer. If they are nearer, we can join those memory holes and we can have the larger hole which can be allocated to the new process. But in this case it is not possible because they are not contiguous and the memory holes which are available may not be sufficient to accommodate a new process. So in this case, even though the total memory space is available, we are not able to use it. So that is called as memory fragmentation or external fragmentation. So in the external fragmentation, total memory space exists to satisfy request, but it is not contiguous. It cannot be allocated because it is scattered throughout the memory. So there is another kind of fragmentation that is called as internal fragmentation. Here, the allocated memory will be slightly larger than the requested memory. So that will lead to wastage of memory. For example, the size of a memory hole is 1000 bytes and the amount of memory requested is, for example, 998 bytes. So instead of allocating 998 bytes, we can allocate complete 1000 bytes. If you allocate only 998 bytes, only 2 bytes of memory will be left over. It may not be used in future at all because it is very small amount of memory. So instead of allocating only 998 bytes of memory, what we can do is we can allocate 1000 bytes of memory. So the requirement is only 998 bytes, but we could allocate 1000 bytes. So 2 extra bytes are allocated here. So those 2 extra bytes basically not being used. So that is called as internal fragmentation. So in a particular partition, that much amount of memory is being not used. So that is called as internal fragmentation. Here, if you adopt the first fit strategy for memory allocation for n blocks, then 50% of blocks will be lost due to fragmentation. It means only 50% of the memory is used, remaining 50% will be lost due to internal fragmentation. So that is only 1/3 of the memory is usable and remaining 1/3 is unusable. It means only 50% of the memory can be used and remaining 50% will be wastage in the fragmentation. It is called as 50% rule. So now the external fragmentation can be reduced by a technique called compaction. Compaction is the technique used to reduce the external fragmentation. We know that external fragmentation leads to wastage of memory. It can be reduced by the technique called compaction. In the compaction, what we do is we shuffle the memory contents to place all free memory together to form one particular large block. In the external fragmentation, what is happening is the smaller memory holes are scattered throughout the memory. Even if you count the total memory, it is sufficient to allocate to a process, but we cannot do it because it is not contiguous. It is not present at the same location. It is scattered. So what we can do is whatever the contents exist in the memory, it can be shuffled, and whatever the free space exists in the memory, they can be brought together to form a large block. So this is called as compaction. The compaction is possible only if the relocation is dynamic. For the static relocation compaction is not possible. Only during execution time it can be done. Hence, the compaction is possible only during relocation time. But there may be I/O problems causing during compaction.